The preseason is over for the Orlando Magic. They spent it exploring and developing this roster and figuring out just what its limits might be. It's time to wrap up a very successful, very fun preseason as we look ahead to Wednesday and the NBA season. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is October 15th, 2022. My name is Philip Rossman. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Orlando Magic finished their preseason with a 114-108 victory over the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll break down what the Magic did in experimenting this preseason and the way they have expanded their roster to try and take advantage of all the great things about it. We'll go over the box score and go over the final cuts that the Magic have made, including one that is a little heartbreaking, unfortunately. But we'll go over the Magic cutting their roster down to their final 17 as we get ready for the regular season to begin. Before we do that, though, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. If you want to look at this preseason, I really think you should look at it as one great experiment. This preseason has really been about, yes, laying down foundations. Yes, setting what this team wants to be about, not just for this year, but for the well beyond. It was about all of these things. And the Magic did some really good things offensively. They did some really good things defensively. They still have a lot of areas where they need to learn and grow. So the work is obviously not done. But by that same token, this preseason was also really about figuring out how to expand this offense or expand this team and improve as a team. This preseason was about trying to figure out just what all of these players can do. The Magic on Friday night started the lineup that I think a lot of us in Magic fandom have kind of been curious about and dreaming about. You know, perhaps with Jonathan Isaac in there instead of Mo Bamba, but still very much the same kind of principle. We all wanted to see what life would look like if Franz Wagner played the two. And so the Magic started Cole Anthony, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter, and Mo Bamba on Friday in their final preseason game. And I said this before when that lineup was announced. It's not about whether this lineup succeeds or fails. And the results were mixed. First stint, they did very well. I think they scored 16 points in 14 possessions. In their second stint at the end of the second quarter, it was like 7 points in 8 possessions. So very, very mixed. And there are concerns with spacing and how the Cavs defended them that would say, okay, maybe this isn't the best lineup. But the whole point is to experiment. At this stage of the preseason, the Magic should be testing and trying everything, because if this team is truly positionless and versatile like they all say, then they have to be willing to try it all. They have to be willing to do anything or be willing to play their players anywhere. And to me, this lineup was just something fun to see and to try and test out, but B, it was a lineup that forced a lot of Magic players to play roles that they'll play in spots throughout the course of the season, and just to see how it looks. just to see how much players' games can expand. For much of this preseason, for instance, Cole Anthony has not played point guard. He might have been the smallest player on the floor. He might have been the point guard. But Cole Anthony was not the one initiating offense. He was not the one kind of generating the push for the Magic. And that may very well change once the regular season begins. I don't know what the Magic's ultimate plans will be. But the Magic wanted to put the ball in Franz Wagner's hands. And it didn't matter who else was on the floor. Franz Wagner was going to be the initiator. And that's exactly how the Magic played, not just in this game Friday, but throughout the entire preseason. This whole effort was an experiment to see how much Franz Wagner could handle. And sure, the Cavs picked up some full court. They put some pressure on him. The Magic got to see a little bit of that, and he struggled maybe a little bit with that. But there was really, there's some poor shooting in this game, but there was really no discernible difference between Franz Wagner bringing the ball up and initiating offense and anyone else. Let's just make this really, really clear. If preseason is an indication of anything, Orlando is going to put the ball in Franz Wagner's hands and trust his decision making. This is a massive expansion of his role, and while it may not result in the shots that everyone wants to see Franz Wagner take, he is going to be a central figure in this offense. The Magic are going to use him almost exactly like the same thing going to use Tito Turkoglu, except I think Franz might be a better overall scorer than Turk was. That's meant as a compliment to both, but that's part of the experimenting the Magic wanted. Orlando's offense is very much going to be an inversion of everything you think about. It's going to be Franz Wagner running the point. It's going to be Paolo Banchero running pick and roll and cutting along the baseline. It's going to be Cole Anthony, Terrence Ross, Jalen Suggs. It's going to be guards setting screens for bigs to free them up and to get their movement going. This Magic offense is complex. It's read-based, but there are actions and principles that the Magic have to try and time their cuts, to try and get motion off the ball to occupy the defense and create the space they need. And then sometimes Franz Wagner just needs to cross Cedi Osman over into oblivion, as he did early in the game. This is really the experimenting the Magic wanted to do this preseason. And in this sense, not just that the Magic went 4-1 with a 114-108 win over the Cavaliers. We'll talk about the end of that game a little bit more toward the end, or toward the end of the show. But this preseason was a success because we could see how expansive this Magic team's game can be. We could see the versatility that this Magic team has talked about for so long. You could see it all play out on the floor. About how they really might be positionless. How they really do have at least two 6'10" guys and Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero who can attack off the dribble, run pick and rolls, and coordinate offense. They didn't do it as much with Paolo, but point Paolo is a thing that they've tried periodically. This is a really interesting team because of that inversion and because defenses are going to have to find a way to deal with it. Now, who's to say what from preseason will carry over to the regular season? That's the unfortunately difficult part. We don't really know how this Magic team's going to play, because this preseason was about testing things out. Each game it felt they were testing out something specific or trying out something specific, trying to see what might work when the games start. And the mystery then will be Wednesday, what this team looks like when the games start. When they have XYZ going for them. When they have everything. It's a real question. I'm not going to sit here and lie. It's a real question. But we will see exactly what this team does. And if the preseason is any indication, there will be some experimenting to go. There will be some funky things the Magic try. But what the Magic learned in preseason was just how much this team can expand and how much this team can do. It was a very, very successful. This is honestly, I will say this. Beyond the Magic going 4-1, which I think is a huge deal, which I think is a bigger deal than people probably are thinking right now. This was one of the most successful and interesting preseasons I've seen from the Magic in a very long time. The amount of buy-in, the amount of connection, the amount of things they tried that seemed to work. I don't know if the Magic are going to be play-in tournament good. I don't know where they'll ultimately end up. But if preseason is any indication, I do think the Magic are due for a better season than people believe. So it might be time to get a little bit excited, just a little bit, as we get ready for Wednesday's game. We're going to go over the final box score of the final preseason game, talk a little bit about the end of the game at the end of the show as well, including some of the unfortunate cuts the Magic made this morning. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our pals at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. With college football coming today, the NFL tomorrow, it's your last chance to get in on the NFL action before your life is consumed by the NBA. Sorry, football, it's time to move over. It's basketball season again. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. Whether it's a college game with Florida playing LSU tonight or the Bucks taking on the Steelers tomorrow. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Plus, they got over-unders for Paolo Banchero's stat line, as well as Rookie of the Year and Most Improved Player odds. You can get your bets on the Magic now, because like I said, it's a good preseason for the Orlando Magic. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's roll through the final box score of the final preseason game for the Orlando Magic. Like I said, you take preseason stats with a grain of salt, but just watching this team play, there is a lot to like. I will say that there is a lot to like. Let's just start here. We'll get to more of this at the end of the show, but I love the way this team fights. Just thinking about the bigger picture of things, Orlando said they didn't want mistakes to snowball, mistakes to become more mistakes, to kind of to grow and expand. And I will say this, the Magic, especially in this game, made mistakes. They made mistakes against Memphis on Tuesday. They made plenty of mistakes against San Antonio. They made plenty of mistakes against Dallas. The team generally, and especially as this preseason progressed, seemed to get better at limiting those mistakes, at containing those mistakes to maybe one or two instances before fighting their way back into the game. That is a huge step of growth. If that could carry over into the regular season consistently, they're going to accomplish one of their goals and be more competitive in these games. You didn't see these the Dallas game maybe a little bit, but you didn't see these long stretches where the team just stunk. Memphis, I kind of throw that first Memphis game out just because the Magic probably weren't ready for a preseason game at that point. The Dallas game, Luka went off on them. But for the most part, the Magic did a really good job of cordoning off mistakes or cordoning off rough stretches of play to a couple of minutes, a couple of possessions. Nothing crazy. And so I do think there's a lot to be proud of here. And that's largely what happened in this Cleveland game. It was a back and forth game. Both teams had their moments in the sun. Orlando was in control for most of it. The Cavs did race ahead in the third quarter, but it never really got out of hand. The largest lead in the game for the Magic was 10. The largest lead for the Cavaliers was 7. I think last year's team, they had a 10-point lead earlier. There's 27 lead changes, 12 ties. I think last year's team, regardless of preseason, last year's team would have let Cleveland take that 7-point lead and expand it. I don't think the Magic would have held on in a game like this, especially in a game where all the Magic starters had a negative plus minus. Largely third quarter stuff, but It was a difficult game, and again, we were all excited. The Franz Wagner at the 2 lineup was interesting, but the results were very, very mixed. I don't think that this is a lineup we will see on opening night, but it was a lineup worth trying. So you take some of that experimenting into account when you talk about this team. Let's go through some final numbers here. Paolo Banchero, 17 points, 6 for 12 shooting, 1 for 3 from beyond the arc, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, just 1 turnover, 3 fouls. All 3 of them picked up very, very early though. Paolo Banchero looks very, very comfortable. I know there's a healthy obsession with the first overall pick. There probably should be. But I would just say he has looked more and more comfortable each game of the preseason. He scored 17 points in this game, but I wouldn't say he was super active in doing that or looking for the ball. Yeah, he had that really nice step back jumper in the late first quarter, early second quarter, which shows just how good he could be. But I really don't think Paolo is imposing himself on the game yet. I honestly, I think one of the problems the Magic had, they had 15 turnovers in this game, but it certainly felt a whole lot more. So you bring those turnovers down, which is nice. But one thing that I really like about the way Paolo plays is he's really playing within the offense. He's finding his shots within the offense. He's not forcing action. And honestly, I think one of his problems and one of the Magic's problems in this game is they overpassed. The Magic had 23 assists on 39 field goal attempts. The assist numbers are good. I think a lot of their struggles shooting-wise, especially early in the game, was because they were trying to make either a complex pass where they needed a simple pass, or they were frankly giving up, decent looks for tougher looks because they're just conscious of trying to pass the ball, of trying to get each other involved. Honestly, this isn't just a Paolo thing, but I'll use Paolo as the example because he's a rookie. And I feel like when I watch him play, he's trying to fit in. And that's great. He's got to fit in. But I also think Paolo's given up good shot opportunities for himself in this effort to fit in. And I do think someone is, he'll review the tape, and I'm sure this will be pointed out to him. Someone's got to go up to him and say, hey, take the shot. Take that shot. Take that shot. Do not worry. Your teammates are behind you. They know you're a passer. And honestly, I would say this, when that mindset changed for Paolo a little bit, and it happened a few times in this game, when the mindset changes for Paolo where he's driving to score, the opportunities for passing open up. There's a play in the second quarter. Paolo did a drive for a nice layup. It was a really, really nice play, a really, really tough layup that he made. And the next time he got into that pick and roll, he drove down the middle of the lane with aggression. The defense collapsed around him, and he fired a really nice one-handed pass to Wendell Carter under the basket for a dunk. Driving with the intent to score is not a selfish thing if you're good enough to read the defense and pass the ball. Paolo Banchero is going to find very, very quickly that he is good enough to do a lot of different things. He is very, very, very good. He may not have the aggression ratchet up to 11 yet, but he's going to find his space on the floor. He's going to have big assist games. I'll say right here, I think the Magic will probably have 2, maybe 3 guys, maybe even 4. They have 4 guys who potentially could get triple doubles. Let's leave it at that. Paolo, Wendell, Franz, and probably Markel are all capable of getting triple doubles. But for all 4 of them, they're only able to do that if they are aggressive. If the defense is collapsing and thinking, oh boy, Paolo Banchero is driving down the lane, we need to collapse and decrease the space. That's what opens up passing lanes. You can't be driving with the intent to pass because then the defense can sit on it. If you're driving with the intent to score with an aggressive mindset, that changes everything. And I think that's where Paolo is right now. Is he's still trying to fit in, trying to be a good teammate. He knows he's a rookie. He's not trying to step on any toes. The Magic just need to keep encouraging him to shoot and keep showing him opportunities for him to score, and he will get a whole lot better. Again, he scored 17 points, led the team in scoring. Did not feel like that. I will be perfectly honest. It did not feel like he was that dominant of a scorer. He just kind of was. Got to give special props to Cole Anthony. 14 points, 4 for 7 shooting. Did not take a three-pointer in this game. 3 turnovers for him. Cole's had a really up and down preseason. I am less worried about him because he's a little bit more of a veteran. I think he knows how to get himself ready and how to be ready. I would say I was really impressed with Cole Anthony's preseason. To be perfectly honest, I thought more than anyone else, he was quick with his decisions, and they may not have always been the right decisions, especially decisions to shoot. But his decision making was really, really quick. And if there's a player that symbolizes the Magic's overall kind of philosophy offensively, it's got to be Cole Anthony. And what he tried to do this game. I was very, very impressed with Cole Anthony, and I know the numbers don't suggest that and don't suggest that he was that great. But I really loved how Cole Anthony played. The shot selection will get better, but generally I didn't hate the shots he took. He missed a bunch of threes. There's maybe a few wild floaters in there, but he's aggressive getting downhill. He's making quick choices. He's not slowing the game down. And honestly, his passing was as good as anyone else's. He understood how quickly you have to make that pass to get that guy open in the corner to ring that bell. And so I really liked what Cole Anthony did this preseason. And this was a solid game for him. He had some nice dribble pull-ups, did a good job, attacking the rotation when they tried to close out on him on the 3-point line. Hit a couple of nice mid-range jumpers. So Cole Anthony's got to have a really good role on this team. I think he's going to have a really, really good season. Struggles today for Franz Wagner and Wendell Carter. Franz was just 4 for 12, 1 for 6 from deep for 13 points. Wendell Carter, 2 for 7 shooting, 7 points, 7 rebounds. Just kind of a rough shooting nights for them. Again, it's preseason, so I won't be too concerned at this point. They were still pretty solid everywhere else and doing the thoughts that you want them to do. Franz on the ball, probably taking some wilder shots, attacking the basket, absorbing a lot of the pressure. I don't think the Magic want point Franz all the time, but they will run Franz as the main initiator a lot this year. And so I think that's going to be part of an adjustment that he has to make this season. The Orlando Magic shoot 43.8% from the floor. We're going to get to the bench, don't worry. 12 for 39 from beyond the arc. So again, the 3-point percentage probably isn't where it needs to be yet. The attempts are there. They just got to make them. 24 for 31 from the foul line, 17 offensive rebounds for 21 second chance points. A big reason why the Magic were able to stay in the lead throughout this one. Both teams do a good job with turnovers, 15 for Orlando, 14 for Cleveland. The Cavaliers led in scoring by Karis LeVert by Isaac Okoro with 17 points. Karis LeVert with 15. Evan Mobley in his first preseason game plays 16 and a half minutes, scores 8 points for the Cavaliers. The Orlando Magic win 114 to 108. We're going to talk about some of the end of the bench guys and how the Magic pulled out the victory, plus say goodbye to a good friend here in Orlando and someone that we are going to dearly miss on the Orlando Magic this season. We'll wrap up the preseason coming up here in just a moment. It being the final preseason game, I really expected and proved to be true that we would see a lot of the end of the bench guys play in this one, and especially closing the game. We haven't seen a lot of Kevon Harris. We didn't see any of Jay Scrubb. We didn't see any of Simi Shitu. We didn't see any of the Exhibit 10 guys play, which I thought was a little weird, but Orlando got a good look at some of their end of the bench guys in the fourth quarter. And frankly, they did a really good job pulling out and winning this game. Orlando led by 2 points entering the fourth quarter and really entered a back and forth quarter to close this one out. And so guys like Caleb Houston, guys like Kevon Harris, and frankly, RJ Hampton played exceptionally well in the fourth quarter to help the Magic get the win. Caleb Houston had another fantastic game. 11 points, 4 for 6 shooting, 3 for 4 from deep. Guy is just a bucket. He makes baskets and makes shots and makes some really tough threes. I think we knew this coming out of college. If Caleb Houston has his feet set, he is going to hit the shot. That's his strength. He is a feet set 3-point shooter, and he will hit those shots. He will hit the shot if he is given the space and the time to do it. So, a really nice showing for him. I was really, really impressed with Caleb Houston as always. Kevon Harris got his first real minutes, and the dude was just all over the place. And in a good way. 8 points, 3 for 4 shooting, made his only 3-pointer. He was just flying around the basket. He had a couple offensive rebounds. If he made a mistake, he was busting his butt to the other end of the court to make up for it. his energy was infectious because he was just all over. He was just all over the place, able to get to the basket, hit a three, just doing a lot of interesting things, just mixing it up. You could see why he was so successful in Summer League, because energy is just everything in Summer League. But you could also see why the Magic made him a two-way contract player, and why he's someone that they wanted around and wanted to invest heavily in. Kevon Harris was very, very good in this game. Where the Magic went all big in the first quarter, they were all small in the fourth quarter. Admiral Schofield played center in the fourth quarter, and it was his only preseason minutes, but 6 points, 2 for 3 shooting, all 3-pointers, 2 for 3 from beyond the arc. Just really tough game, and Admiral Schofield improving as a 3-point shooter is a big piece of his puzzle. But he plays anywhere, and I thought did a really good job manning the glass and just kind of giving the Magic a little bit of a presence on the inside, and frankly just doing his job, and really, really impressive. But the guy who impressed me most in the fourth quarter of this game, as the Magic pulled this out, was RJ Hampton. 8 points, 3 for 5 shooting for him. 3 blocks, 2 in that fourth quarter, 2 of them coming off his mistakes. He turned the ball on one possession late in the game. The Magic were clinging to a lead. He turned the ball over. Cleveland starts a fast break. RJ Hampton comes out of nowhere to block a shot. He recovers on his own mistake. Last year, I don't think RJ Hampton does that. Last year, I don't think RJ Hampton is able to make that kind of a recovery and able to stay in the play. I think he, frankly, bopes a little bit, or just lets that mistake compound. RJ's had one of the most impressive preseasons of any player on the Magic. He's played under control. He's played with composure. He looks like it really clicked for him, and the game started to slow down, and that makes him a really viable weapon and really viable player. He understands his role a lot better. He understands when to decelerate in the paint, which is a huge deal for a lot of those speedy players. Everything really seems to have come together for RJ Hampton, and this is like night and day from where he was in Summer League, where he really struggled. We talked about how much he struggled in Summer League, but he really found himself, and I think he's a player the Magic can trust a little bit to be on the floor a whole lot. The Magic have a lot of guys that this rotation is going to be rough, because someone who is good and someone who has contributed is going to be left out. Unfortunately, I think that's just going to be the case. But I really love what RJ Hampton did. He made a couple of big shots late. He made a bunch of big defensive plays late. He really made sure the Orlando Magic held on to this one, 114 to 108. We do have a little bit of breaking news, though, here on this Saturday morning. The Orlando Magic, as expected, have waived Simi Shitu and Jay Scrubb. They were signed to Exhibit 10 contracts. They'll play with the Lakeland Magic. But unfortunately, the Magic did have another decision to make that they had to make by Monday, as the rosters have to be down to their 15 players and two-way players. Orlando had 16 contracts on their books, and so unfortunately we did have to say goodbye to one player, and it's honestly a very, very tough one. I think the writing was on the wall based on his play, based on his usage in Summer League, not his play, because he still played very, very well. But the Orlando Magic have waived Devin Kennedy. Devin Kennedy only played 12 minutes in this game, missed all 4 of his shots, all 3 of his 3-pointers. That would not have mattered in the long run in this one. We know who Devin Kennedy is. We know what a great 3-point shooter he is. More importantly, we know what a great person he is. He arrived in Orlando, played with the Lakeland Magic, won them a championship, came to the Orlando Magic at a time when they were trying a bunch of different guys out, stood out because of his shooting, stood out because of his personality, suffered a major knee injury, suffered a major leg injury. Magic fans rallied behind him. He rallied behind the Magic. The Magic organizationally rallied behind him. They brought him back, kept him in the Lakeland system, helped him rehab. He worked his way back up to the NBA and played exceptionally well last year. But more than that, like Devin Kennedy, I think represents a lot of the culture the Magic are trying to build, and a lot of the family identity and the family spirit that this Magic team wants. Kennedy he's a good dude. I've had a few interactions with him online. He's embraced Magic fandom as much as anything else. He's embraced being in Orlando in huge ways. And unfortunately, this is a business. There are only so many roster spots. and he was kind of the odd man out, and it always kind of felt like that was going to be the case throughout the course of the season. It's not a hard feeling saying hopefully, because I think judging by what I've seen from responses to me when I put the news up on Twitter, but this is a guy who embraced everything about being in Orlando, embraced everything about this team and the Magic, and unfortunately, just he's knocking on the door to the NBA. I hope the Magic can keep him in Lakeland, because I love to keep him in the franchise's orbit just in case a roster spot does open up. But I also hope that he gets a roster spot somewhere, that he gets to an opportunity where he can play, because this is one of the truly good dudes in the NBA. I think the Magic are disappointed that this is the decision that had to be made. It's rough, but that's life in the NBA. That's unfortunately the business. And Devin is one of the great dudes. And he's he's going to keep working. You can check him out. You can still follow him. He started his own podcast, the Run Your Own Race podcast. Talking to a lot of guys around the NBA about their journeys as well. Definitely check him out there. And no matter where Devin Kennedy ends up, Magic fans are always going to be always going to be Devin Kennedy fans. Again, he is a culture guy. He's a locker room setting guy, and he's going to make whatever team he's on better for him being there. So, unfortunately, it's not going to happen here, at least not at this point. But we want to wish our best of luck to Devin Kennedy as well. Again, hopefully he, if he ends up in Lakeland, we'd love to keep him in our orbit, keep him in the family, keep him in the franchise. But that dude is ready to go to the NBA. That dude is NBA ready, and he just needs an opportunity to go out there and shine. That, unfortunately, is going to do it for us today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of the places on the podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. Now that you're done listening to us, go check out the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022. It's a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. The local team experts and the NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey all combining into one ultimate NBA preview. Search for Ultimate Pro NBA Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. That will do it for the preseason. Preseason's over. We look ahead now to opening night Wednesday in Detroit against the Detroit Pistons. We'll break down what the Magic can expect as the season begins coming up on Monday. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.